1.2.2 Techniques of Non-Probability Sampling. Non-probability sampling is a method of selecting research participants using non-random criteria. It's often used when it's not possible to identify every member of a population, or when the population parameters are unknown. Non-probability sampling is a non-random and subjective method of sampling where the selection of the population elements comprising the sample depends on the personal judgment or the discretion of the sampler. Non-probability sampling is a sampling method where some elements of the population have no chance of selection. These are sometimes referred to as out of coverage or undercovered, where the probability of selection can't be accurately determined. It involves the selection of elements based on assumptions regarding the population of interest, which forms the criteria for selection. Non-probability sampling includes convenience sampling, quota sampling, judgment or purposive sampling, snowball sampling. Convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is also called accidental sampling. In convenience sampling, in terms of time and cost, sample elements are easily available. But the sample elements selected by using this technique are not representative of the population because of unknown degree of bias in the estimate. We should generally avoid using convenience sampling, that is, taking people walking on the street, church groups, shopping people, travelers waiting a bus, people available in certain meeting or conferences as our sample. Convenience sampling is not recommended in serious studies or conclusive researches that will be used for scientific move or applied for decision-making purposes. But it is more useful for exploratory type research designs, student researches, etc. Judgmental or purposive sampling. In this type of sampling, the researcher chooses the participants as per his or her own judgment, keeping back in mind the purpose of the study. It uses the judgment of an expert in selecting cases, or it selects cases with a specific purpose in mind. This type of sampling is used in exploratory research or in field research. With purposive sampling, the researcher hardly knows whether the cases selected do represent the population or not. As mostly sampling problem is being addressed with a specific plan in mind, most of the sampling methods may be considered purposive in nature. Purposive sampling is somewhat less costly, more readily accessible, more convenient, and select only those individuals that are relevant to research design. Besides this, there is no way to ensure that the sample is truly representative of the population, and more emphasis is placed on the ability of the researcher to assess the elements of the population. For example, for studying attitude toward any national issue, a sample of journalists, teachers, and legislators may be selected for the study. They qualify to be part of purposive sampling as they can more reasonably be expected to represent the correct attitude than other class of people. Here is another example. Television reporters stopping certain individuals on the street in order to ask their opinions about certain political affairs. However, the television reporter has to apply certain judgment when deciding who to stop on the street to ask questions. Otherwise, it would be the case of random sampling technique. See quota sampling. In quota sampling, the population is first segmented into mutually exclusive subgroups, just as in stratified sampling. Then judgment is used to select the subjects or units from each segment based on a specified proportion. For example, an interviewer may be told to sample 200 females and 300 males between the age of 45 and 60. In quota sampling, the selection of the sample is non-random. For example, interviewers might be tempted to interview those who look most helpful. The problem is that these samples may be biased because not everyone gets a chance of selection. This random element is its greatest weakness, and quota versus probability has been a matter of controversy for many years. Deep snowball or referral sampling. It is also called chain referral sampling. In this method, the sample is actually collected in various stages. Snowball sampling, which is a non-probability sampling method, is basically sociometrical in nature. Although snowball sampling is considered to be a form of accidental sampling by some, this method is appropriate when the members of a special population are difficult to locate, for example, homeless people, migrant workers, etc. It begins by the collection of data from one or more contacts, usually known to the person collecting the data. At the end of the data collection process, the data collector asks the respondent to provide contact information for other potential respondents. These potential respondents are contacted, interviewed, and further asked to provide more contacts. This process goes on till the purpose of the researcher is achieved. Snowball sampling is most useful when there are very few methods to secure a list of the population or when the population is unknowable.